And welcome to a brand new edition of Match Points here on tennismajors.com, where you know we get together to debate and discuss the biggest and hottest topics in tennis, and there's a lot to get to today. Let's say hello once again to our esteemed panel as usual. She, of course, a lot of FaceTime during Roland Garros. You saw her on center court. Of course, the 2013 Wimbledon women's champion, tennis great broadcaster, and interviewer extraordinaire, Marion Bartoli. There he is once again, international tennis writer, president thereof, contributor to ESPN, The Guardian, of course, now to tennismajors.com right here, our own Simon Cambers. And finally, haircut growing in a little bit, still looks like a rock star. You know him as a tennis writer, the New York Times, the No Challenges Remaining podcast, and of course elsewhere, the always electric Ben Rothenberg. All right, gang. Let's get started, and let's start to Wimbledon and beyond. 55% of tennis majors readers say that Djokovic will complete the calendar slam. So I ask you, which is more likely to happen? Djokovic does complete the calendar slam, or he does not. Let's begin with you, Ben. Does he, does he? Which is more likely?
Yeah, it's tough. That's a tough question. I think 55 is about 50-50. I feel the same way. I will say no, just because I think it's more likely he doesn't do it, just because it's so tough to do this. We saw with Serena, who was a huge favorite in every match she played in 2015, just how many things have to go right to win 28 matches in a row at Grand Slams in 1 year, and all the pressure that keeps building and building and building and building as you go. I don't think anybody thought it would end for Serena with Vinci in the semifinals of the U.S. Open, but the pressure just gets exponential. Even for Djokovic, it would keep ratcheting up and up. So I would say no, but it's certainly not impossible. I mean, I wouldn't bet on this either way. I think that it's a tight call because right now he does look very comfortable. But we also saw in 2016 how quickly things derailed for him after winning the first two Grand Slams of that year.
All right, let's move on. Simon, same question for you now. 55% of our readers say he'll do this calendar Grand Slam. Which is more likely? He will or he won't?
I don't want to shoot down surveys, but I really don't like surveys or polls. I never believe any of them, but it's statistically more likely that he won't do it. I mean, just from a maths point of view, he's got to win 14 matches to do it. Anything could go wrong. He could slip on the grass at Wimbledon, get injured. Somebody could have a blinder and take him out. I mean, of course, he's playing unbelievable tennis, and the confidence that winning at Roland Garros will give him should probably take him through Wimbledon. He's a big, big favourite for Wimbledon, no question. I mean, he's 5 times a champion after all, defending champion effectively from 2 years ago, having not played last year, or the tournament not happened last year. It's going to take someone really playing out of their mind to stop him, or accumulation of things, or something crazy at Wimbledon. But I think, when you look forward to the US Open and onwards, the Olympics is in there. Is it going to be a golden slam? Is it going to be a Steffi of 1988? That would be unbelievable. But, I mean, if anyone's capable of doing it, it's him. And to do it at 34 would be astonishing.
All right, Marion, I'm giving you €1,000, and you can bet it on either yes, calendar slam, no calendar slam, Novak Djokovic. Where are you putting my money so you can win €2,000?
Jesus. Well, I know if he does it, my husband will be the happiest man on the entire planet because he's the biggest Novak Djokovic fan. That said, if I'm thinking with my head, I can't agree more with the guys. I mean, there is so many things that can happen during a Grand Slam, first of all, then on 2 different surfaces. The US Open after what happened last year, and it was really it was a chaos what happened with Novak getting pulled out of the court. So I think to come back, if he wins Wimbledon, he has to go to Tokyo. If he wins gold there, then the amount of pressure he will have to face at the US Open with the young kids like Tsitsipas and Medvedev and even Zverev sometimes on a hard court that can really push him. Of course he can do it, but the chance is really tiny. But he has what it takes inside him to do it. It's more about him controlling everything he can control, which is his temper, the calendar, how to get ready, maybe playing not so many matches during the hard court in the US to try to save some energy for the Open at the end of it. Because I think the amount of pressure he's going to face if he's winning Wimbledon is going to be absolutely enormous, and you don't want to arrive there a bit burned out. But God, that's a tough quest. That's such a tough quest. But yeah, I would say he have 10% to do it. He can do it. I would give him 10% of chance definitely not 55, because there are just so many things that can go wrong in a Grand Slam. We even saw it in the final against Tsitsipas. I mean, he was down 2 sets to love, and it was a nail biter at the end. But yeah, what I've been able to show at the French, especially against Rafa, was that third set they played was something else. I mean, I've been seeing a lot of sets of tennis, but that third set between Rafa and Novak at the French Open was absolutely incredible.
All right, let's stay on the subject of Novak Djokovic, who we all know is now one major shy of both Roger and Rafa. I'm going to give you a question. I'm going to give you 3 options to answer. You tell me which applies for you. Can we now crown Djokovic as the greatest of all time? Or do we have to wait for number 20 or even number 21? Can we do it now? Do we have to wait for 20? Do we have to wait for 21? Let's begin with you, Marion.
21.
21 for you.
21. I believe the number of Grand Slam is what counts the most at the end of the day. And I think the weeks at number 1, the number of Master Series and all of it, it's very much depending on a lot of different things. But I think if Novak got to 21 after winning every single Grand Slam twice, which is the only one who has been able to do that, yeah, you can absolutely crown him the GOAT.
All right, Ben, when can we put the crown on the proverbial GOAT? Now, at 20 or 21?
I mean, it's not finished right now because obviously they're all still playing and they can all still increase their numbers, so it's tough to say what happens. But at the moment, I think that Djokovic is leading the pack. I think he's currently ahead of the conversation, even with 19 being one behind. I don't agree with some people that say that it's only Grand Slam wins that matter for this count. I think it's more complex than that, and I think a lot of, just when we're purely talking about results, I think his are the best. I mean, he's won, as Marion said, 2 Grand Slams each. Every time he's the only one who's done that. He's won every Masters Series event at least twice. No one else has won them at least once, even. Most weeks at number 1. The high, the high head-to-head record against the other 2 guys. I think his numbers are really incredible and really rich and really deep. And I think that he has a lot going for him in this conversation already. So even if he's off by 1, if he has 5% fewer Grand Slams than somebody else, I don't think the difference between 19 and 20 is that important, honestly, in the big picture.
So for you, the GOAT conversation is well beyond just the number of majors won.
Yeah, I think that. And there's a lot of that. And I also think I'm also happy to entertain conversations about the GOAT debate that are not even as statistical or as objective. I think if people say, oh, I really love Federer because he plays so gracefully and he's so balletic and makes it look so beautiful and that's why he's the greatest to me, I think that's a totally valid argument for someone to make. I think that's fine too. Or if they say Nadal changed the way the game is played and no one ever played like him before and that's why he's the greatest to me, like, okay, that's great. Or if you say my favorite is, Hugo Gaston because I love drop shots, like, okay, you're probably drunk, but that's a great answer too. Whatever it is, it's fine. There's lots of different ways to have this kind of conversation.
Simon, same question. Can we crown him now, all things considered as they are? Wait for 20 or wait for 21? Simon.
It's too early. It's too early to crown him. I mean, I think the Grand Slams is the main thing that you'll judge people on. I mean, it's what we've been doing for the last 30 years, so it'd be strange to go away from it. But I agree with Ben. I mean, he sort of took the words right out of my mouth. I think there'll be people who say that Roger Federer, maybe it's the effect he had on people, that what he made people do or how many fans he had around the world, the impact he had on the world of tennis. I mean, I was talking to Darren Cahill the other day and he said he thinks Federer hastened the introduction of analytics in tennis. Now, maybe that's a way, because he said people were trying to look at a way to beat Federer. They couldn't find it normally, and stats were coming in more and more, and that was sort of the perfect time for it to happen, for people to use them to try and figure Federer out. I'm not sure anyone did except for Nadal for a long time. But, these things are all important. I think, you've got to look at Federer. He's won over 100 tournaments. You've got to look at Novak. He's won every Masters 1000 twice. Nadal, incredibly dominant the way he played on clay. It's impossible to do it, and I wouldn't even start until they've finished, because who knows? Who knows what could happen? Maybe there'll be a miracle at Wimbledon. Maybe Federer will win again. Maybe Nadal can win another French. You could go on
Change
and on.
the conversation. Absolutely. Marion, you wanted to add. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add, guys. Let's say Roger stays at 20. And let's say Rafa wins one other Roland Garros, 21, and Novak finishes it off at 25. You can't possibly say that Roger has been the GOAT, just because simply there is 5 Grand Slam difference. So I understand as a fan point of view, you might prefer as a fan the aesthetic of a player, but as tennis analysis or tennis pendant, we can't think that way. That's the way a fan thinks, but not as as an analytic, that's our job, to analyze his tennis. You can't think that way. You're going to say that maybe you like Rafa's attitude or mental toughness or the way he plays on clay or something, but just a pure fan point of view. But if we think the GOAT, we really have to take the Grand Slam, because otherwise Serena would have been the GOAT in front of Margaret Court since God knows how many years, but she's still chasing that 24 and actually that 25 to pass over the Grand Slam. So we've been seeing in a lot of different decades that people are chasing that numbers just because that's the one that stands out first in your resume.
All right, let's get a quick counterpoint from both of you. Simon, you first, and Ben, you quick to follow. Go ahead, Simon.
I was just going to point out the Serena Margaret Court thing, because a lot of people do think Serena is the greatest of all time because Margaret played half of her slams and won them in the era before everything went professional, so in the amateur era. So you'll get a lot of debate. I take Marion's point, if there was a 5 slam difference, it would be hard, but in Federer's case, he's won over 100 tournaments. Maybe you just base it on that. Who knows? There are lots of different ways to look at it.
All right, Ben, go ahead. Your point.
Yeah, I sort of disagree with Marion. I do think it is, the GOAT debate is inherently a fan conversation. I think it's sort of a barroom kind of debate conversation thing. It's not all just about something you can calculate on a spreadsheet. I think it's about how players are remembered, how they make people feel. I think it can be that kind of conversation just as validly as well. And, I think we've had this for a long time. I think we only really started seeing Grand Slams as being the important measure when it was brought up during Pete Sampras's career as sort of the only way to make him interesting with him going for this Grand Slam count record. And I think that it's something that is more complicated than that. I still think Sampras is a good example. I think Sampras is currently 4th among men in the Grand Slam conversation, or the Grand Slam count, but I don't think he's considered by most people to be the 4th best player of all time. I think a lot of people would put, Laver or Borg or someone who won a career slam, which Sampras didn't do. I think it's much more complicated than just this one unit of currency being the be-all, end-all. And I also agree that I think Serena's been better than Margaret Court for a long time. So I think that conversation is different.
Fair enough. Let's move on to question number 6, and we'll stay with Djokovic. If not Djokovic to win this Wimbledon 2021, who would be most likely otherwise to win it? If not Djokovic, then who is most likely, without the draw, just at their game right now, who comes to mind most likely to challenge for it? Marion, who you got?
Roger. I just don't see any other name. I just don't see any other players right now, and especially the next gen or young gen or whatever you want to call it, having enough game and enough wins on grass to be able to go out there and win 7 matches at Wimbledon. I think they have weaknesses in their game that grass is just in phases, and I think if there is one player that can put it together during 14 days and knows how to do it and is so confident when you stay on center court, is Roger.
You got Roger. Simon, same question.
Yeah, Federer is the obvious choice in many ways. It's going to be interesting to see how he can do it over 7 matches. I think it helps that he has a day off between each. If he has that regularity, which he should do, then that will help. And then when you look at him on a one-on-one head-to-head matchup with most players in the draw, it is hard to see if he's fully fit, many of them having even a chance. I think Tsitsipas is the one who has the potential to win Wimbledon one day. I'm not sure his game on grass is ready for it yet, but he moves forward well. He's a good volleyer. He's got a good serve. He's obviously got a lot of confidence, and I really liked the way he seemed to be talking after losing that final at Roland Garros. In the past, he's taken defeats really to heart and really hard, and it's taken him months to get over them. And I think this time I get the impression that he'll sort of move on from that quickly and maybe have his best Wimbledon yet.
Ben, same question. If not Djokovic, then whom?
Yeah, I'm also going to say Federer just because now the other guys have proved themselves they can do it, in this sort of situation. I do think Federer can lose to a bunch of different players if he has off days, and players do have more off days as they get older. I think I could easily see, a Tsitsipas, a Medvedev, a Zverev probably all beating Federer on a given day in a quarterfinal kind of situation. And much of other players too. If Federer really has a bad day, like the way he lost to Felix Auger-Aliassime in Halle, that was not a good match for him at all. But in terms of closing it out and having what it takes to cross the finish line at a Grand Slam, none of the people younger than Djokovic have really proven they can do that with any consistency, unless you're talking about like maybe a Marin Cilic or somebody who did it once. So my answer would be Federer as well, just because the other guys haven't shown it yet. Even if his tennis is not greater, he has the intangibles the other guys lack.
All right, fair enough. Let's move over now to the women's side and in a broad sense. With all the unpredictability and randomness, and some call it fluidity of who's winning and who's advancing. I ask you simply, is all of this unpredictability and randomness, is this actually good for the game, or is it actually bad for the game? Simon, why don't you begin on that?
I don't want to sit on the fence and cause myself some injury, but I don't think it's either. I think it's just transition. It's the way it is. If this was the men's game and the men were in the same situation as the women, with a bunch of new champions at Roland Garros and people like Barbora Krejcikova and people who many people will never have heard of when she comes to Wimbledon, for as good as she is, I just think, we wouldn't be having the same conversation when it's the men. The women get a hard trot when it comes to this kind of thing. I just think they're in slight transition. There are a lot of good players. It is a very open tournament this year for a lot of reasons, with pullouts, etc. Almost anyone in the top 15, 20, you could make a good case for. And a lot of the players who are in the top 8, look at Iga Świątek and Bianca Andreescu. It was only yesterday that they won their first matches on grass in history as a senior, and Andreescu went and lost in the next round. So there's a lot of uncertainty on the women's tour, but I really don't like the argument that it's bad for the women's tour to have new champions. We have to wait and see how it sort of settles over the next few years.
Okay. So you're not on the good side. You're just definitely not on the bad side.
I don't think it's bad at all. I think we've got to introduce these players and see how good they are.
Okay, so Ben, I'll ask you the question. I mean, sports in general is built on rivalries. The good guys, the bad guys, the heroes, the villains, and dynasties. Let's be honest. And on the women's side right now, we don't have these rivalries. We don't have the villains and the heroes. We don't. So some people go, it's exciting, it's wide open, and others go, but I don't have a narrative. I don't have a storyline. Is it good or bad?
I think overall it's probably bad, if I had to say, because I think it's too much of a good thing, potentially. I think there's no happy medium between the two tours. I think these two tours right now could not be more different. They're at opposite extremes of predictability versus parity right now, where we just, in the previous question, we just answered who can win Wimbledon if it's not Djokovic, and we all said Federer, because we have no belief in any sort of surprise happening at all. There's no unpredictability, we think, in men's results right now, and that makes it pretty boring, honestly. And on the women's side, who knows? I mean, who can bother predicting who's going to win? Because, I mean, Krejcikova, I think, could have generously been probably in people's, top 15 contenders maybe for the French Open, because she had won a tournament the week before. But she's still a very unknown name, largely to most people. And you're right, it's tough to create narratives about overarching stories of who the best rivals are or whatever. And, the French Open was, I think, maybe different because we did have the top two players both pulling out of the tournament in the second round, with Osaka and Barty both having their own reasons for pulling out. So that maybe destabilized it more than it might have otherwise at that tournament. But yeah, I mean, it's just, but I think both tours have to be envious a bit of what the other one has. I mean, the women have unpredictability and new stars being born all the time, and the men have narratives and consistent superstars to sort of orbit around. And both would do well to have even just 10% of what the other one has in terms of chaos versus stability, because right now they're too far apart there. The balance is off for both.
Okay, Marion, same question. Good for women's tennis, bad for women's tennis, that there is such unpredictability and fluidity?
No, of course it's bad. I mean, I just give you an example. I was doing an activity the other day in France, and I simply asked a question. The panel were watching tennis, who watched Roland Garros, and I asked them who has been winning Roland Garros on the female side this year, and I couldn't get the name. It happened a week before. And this is why, for me, Naomi and Ashley in a way, but Ashley has been very consistent. It's just bad luck for her that she got injured in Roland Garros and just couldn't compete. But that's why Naomi is so important for women's tennis. And I sincerely hope we can find a way for her to come back on the tour and doesn't feel so threatened by so many things, because the way she has been able to already win 4 Grand Slam into her career is she's established herself as a sort of the next Serena, or the person who can win Grand Slams when she's in the draw and fit and ready to play. And we are exciting to see her. I mean, she's such an amazing ambassador for the game. She has different culture. Obviously, she brings so much on the tennis court, and sometimes you will see her get beaten, but at least you have a story to tell. You will say, okay, Naomi Osaka, 4-time Grand Slam champions, got beaten today by, I don't know, whoever, but there's a great story. But if you take those names out for different and multiple reasons, I understand, and you put, names that people don't know, but repetitively, not over just one Grand Slam, but it's almost happening every single time, that people get lost. And when they're getting lost, they get uninterested. And you're losing their interest, and therefore you're losing viewers. And this is where I'm just starting to get worried a little bit, because women's tennis is losing so many viewers right now. that at the end of the day, if we don't find a way to get those top players that people are starting to know just because of their worldwide fame, and we can't put them into a good either mental health situation for Naomi or different reason for the players, but we can't get them on a consistent way into the picture to play a quarter, semi, or final for Grand Slam, then we might happen in 2 or 3 years' time. No one else will watch women's tennis. And of course, that's not the situation we want to be in. So as a player point of view, I was so happy that Nastia got into the final. She's such a dear friend of mine. To see her finally sort of having that breakthrough and playing that Grand Slam final, I was so happy for her. But if I put myself as a broadcaster point of view, and I'm a TV and I have paid millions and millions for the rights of the French Open, I was hoping to get, yes, Nastia on one hand, but then someone else that people know on the other end of the net. So I'm happy to have nice stories. I'm the first believer that, you know, people should have their time in the sunshine, and it's absolutely well deserved. But I sincerely hope we can find a middle ground. And I think Naomi is a masterpiece there, and that's why I was really so disappointed when we couldn't find a way for her, and she had to withdraw, because she's essential in women's tennis stability, because she is the one right now with the most of the Grand Slam. Of course, put it Serena on the side, but the one that is still young and still has a lot in front of her, and you can get to a 2-digit in terms of Grand Slam title, and that is something we absolutely need in women's tennis.
All right, last question, and your answer is one word. That's all we need. Which is more likely to happen at Wimbledon? Roger wins 21 or Serena finally claims 24? Which is more likely to happen? Ben?
Serena.
Simon?
Serena.
Marion?
Serena.
How about that? You guys are agreeing too much. That's bad for
If you wanted more than one word, it would have been more interesting, Josh. But you just let us have one word, and so there you go.
It absolutely would have, and we're up against it time-wise. Folks, again, to our panel, thank you as always. Fantastic. Simon, Ben, of course, Marion. Everyone, make sure that you do subscribe on all platforms of social media and read up on all the latest, including the polls that Simon does not believe in or agree with. On behalf of the panel, Josh Cohen saying thanks for watching. We will catch you next time for more Match Points right here on tennismajors.com.